Okay, welcome back to ASA 183, coming to you from Nashville. These are our final press conferences of the day. Again, after we hear from each presenter, if you're on the live stream, please feel free to type questions into that question box. First off, we're going to hear from Gautam Shah of NASA Langley Research Center. He's going to describe the NASA Quests mission and how it might provide supersonic travel without the supersonic boom. So, Gautam?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. As most are aware, there's currently a prohibition on overland supersonic flight by commercial aircraft, both in the U.S. and many other countries, because of the unacceptably loud sonic boom that those aircraft create. But due to recent advances in technology, it's now possible to design aircraft that can have a potentially much softer sonic boom characteristics, and that has led to a resurgence in interest in supersonic flight. But one of the key barriers to potentially having commercial supersonic aircraft is going to be addressing that current prohibition. Basically, trying to change the rules of currently what we have as a speed limit, and instead address that to change it into more of an actual sound limit or a sound standard that, in terms of an acceptable level of environmental noise. And this is the focus of the overall NASA Quests mission, which is NASA's commitment to try to create the data that's going to be necessary to provide to regulators that can be used to inform their development of a potential, again, a sound standard, which can then enable the development of overland supersonic flight aircraft. So how do we quiet the boom? Normally speaking, a supersonic aircraft, when it's traveling greater than the speed of sound, generates shock waves, which travel in all directions off the aircraft. And as those waves travel to the ground, they tend to blend together into a single pressure wave. And when that wave passes by you, your ears pick that up as a boom, boom, loud sonic boom. And so a lot of the technology developments in the past years have given us the ability to design and shape an aircraft so that those shock waves will, instead of, as they travel to the ground, combine, will tend to stay a little more separate, and as a result, the resulting sound at the ground is much more of a softer thump. To give you an indication of what that would be like, this plot here at the bottom shows a perceived level sound scale, and you see the large green ball there. That's roughly around 75 decibels on this perceived level, or PL scale. This is equivalent to like distant thunder or someone slamming a car door across the street 20 feet away at your neighbor's house. And so you can contrast that with higher levels of sound, like a basketball bounce at 90 PL, or the Concorde sonic boom, which was generated as much higher levels at around 105 decibels, more equivalent to like a balloon pop or a car door slam when you're inside the car. So you can see this will be potentially much quieter. And so the overall NASA Quest mission is to, first of all, develop the X-59 aircraft that'll generate the softer supersonic sounds, and then fly that aircraft over different parts of the U.S., over different communities, to measure the sound levels on the ground, as well as measure public opinion through community surveys, to gather that information that can be given to regulators then to establish a potential sound standard. So it's being done in 3 phases. Phase 1 is the aircraft development itself. Aircraft is being built by Lockheed Martin and is scheduled to begin its first flights next year and ultimately go through 2024, when we'll begin our what we call the acoustic validation phase, to confirm and verify that the X-59 does generate the levels of sound that it was designed to. And that will eventually lead to the community test phase itself, which will be in roughly 2025, where we'll conduct flights in different parts of the country, measure the sound, gather data from public surveys, and then provide that data to regulators in the following year. So to focus again on just the phase 3 aspect of it, this kind of gives you a little summary for what we'll be doing. We're expecting to conduct roughly 4 to 6 tests in different communities around the U.S. Locations for those tests are still being evaluated and determined. to look at variations in different climate regions, geographic variation, population demographics, urbanicity. All those things factor into the sound levels that might be generated, as well as vary public response to those sound levels. Each test is going to be approximately 1 month in duration, and it will be done so the X-59 will be able to generate a range of sound levels on that PL scale. So we'll acquire data across that, gauge response to different levels of sound, and overall acquire this overall community response data that's representative of the general population. So there's a number of key technical elements, selection of the test sites, how do we conduct the appropriate public surveys and analyze and process the data, then how do we appropriately measure the sound characteristics at the ground level, take all this data, combine it, and then provide it to regulators such as the International Civil Aviation Organization, the FAA, for their use in developing that overall sound standard. And so, as I said, the overall timeline for the community test is going to be in 2025 and 26. We'll do the data analysis after that with the intention to deliver that data to regulators in 2027 in preparation for a major meeting of the International Civil Aviation Organization's Committee for Aviation Environmental Protection, which is scheduled to meet in 2028. So that concludes my overview of the Quesst mission. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll start us off with kind of just a basic question. If supersonic flight is kind of the future, how much faster would our airplane rides really be?
I think the actual speed is going to be determined by, as the airplane manufacturers design specific aircraft. For the X-59, it's designed to fly at about Mach 1.4, which is roughly a little over 900 miles per hour. So you can compare that with today's airline flights, which are on 500 to 550 miles per hour. So you can see it's potentially as much as twice the speed.
Okay. And then do you have like a specific method in place yet for how you're going to survey people and determine if they've heard a sound or how loud that sound was for them?
Those plans are still under development of how we'll be doing recruitment to gather participants to be involved in conducting these surveys over the course of a month, looking at ways of how do we communicate with them to say, hey, did you hear something? What did you think about it? And then how do we gather all that data? So all those are in the works right now and will be in place as we get closer toward phase 3.
It looks like we have some questions from the room.
I was wondering how feasible it is, since you had brought up commercial flights. Is the sonic boom a result of a certain amount of thrust for like a certain weight of airplane? I'm wondering how practical it is to soften engines that can make that sort of thrust on something like the size of a 777 or something.
Well, the sonic boom is generated by the speed of the aircraft, basically going through the air faster than the air can move out of the way. So it's not directly related to the engine level of the sound from the engines, but just the physics of the air molecules having to be pushed out of the way as the aircraft moves forward.
So does the sound attenuation sort of follow the design of the aircraft? In other words, I guess you have the sound standard already in design, but you just have to create the aircraft that will move the air around in a way that makes it less noisy?
Well, actually, it's the other way around. Is that we're developing this aircraft and we'll be gathering data of opinion to sound level, opinions at different sound levels, and that data will be used to come up with a standard for what actual commercial airliners would be built to meet that standard and below, so they'll be allowed to fly overland.
I guess my questions are more fundamental, which is how really do you pull that off? I mean, how do you get make the shock waves less noisy?
Okay, there's a number of different technologies used for that. The shaping of the aircraft and to be able to separate those shock waves that come off the aircraft to keep them from merging together, as well as improved methods to predict how those sound waves will travel to the ground. As a lot of those computational advances have come in, we can now predict what that's going to do, and we can adjust the shape of the aircraft to be able to design the shape of the aircraft to be able to keep those separate.
I had a quick question regarding the potential of this technology to make travel more sustainable, more environmentally friendly, since it's reducing the travel time. Is there any chance of that, or is it something you're considering?
Well, the Quest missions, as I said, we're focusing on the sound standard. There are certainly a number of other aspects that are being considered for sustainable aviation, emissions, sound around airports. Those are other research areas that NASA is also involved in. So when you continue working in these multiple different areas, you'll ultimately result in something that will be a more efficient and a more sustainable aviation concept.
Okay, well, thank you, and we'll be back in a minute with our next presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great.